something in the background. Hey everybody, welcome to Do You Believe on Paranormal Zone TV. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight, and for those of you who may be new to the show, if you would please subscribe, I'd really appreciate it, and please don't forget to give the show a like. Now tonight I'm so excited to bring on the show Bret Oldham. He is the author of Children of the Graves, and we are going to be listening to his personal account of his lifelong alien abduction experiences, and I'm so excited. Bret, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you, Noreen. It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to having an educational show.
Now you're going to bring us the education. Now, is there anything you want to add before we start listening to your story?
Well, I know that you do a lot of paranormal shows, and I'd like your audience to know that there is a gap between a lot of alien abductees have a high degree of paranormal activity associated with it, so maybe we can kind of delve into that some too.
Oh yeah, I'd like to hear that. All right, so Bret, would you please start telling us from the beginning your story of your abduction?
Well, my story started when I was 5 years old. I lived in a farm, on a farm in southern Illinois, out in sticks. I mean, it was a gravel road, an old farmhouse surrounded by soybean and cornfields. Up until that point in my life, I'd lived a pretty sheltered life, and I had a brother and a sister at that time. Since I've got another brother, but it was just three kids. We're all pretty close together in age. And in the fall, when it started getting cold, the way this house was designed, it was actually a stairwell in the middle of the house that had a door to it. So you could shut off the upstairs and kind of save on the heating and everything. My mom and stepdad moved us downstairs, and they shut off the top part of the house where the bedrooms normally are. And I was sleeping. They made my brother and I a pallet of quilts. Basically, we slept on the floor. My sister slept on the couch, and my parents had the downstairs bedroom. And one night in the fall, I heard a voice, and of course, you know, there's any kind of noise or anything you're going to hear off the street or anything like that in that kind of environment. And I actually thought it was my stepdad. I remember waking up because the voice was calling to me. And when I remember setting up, and there was a light, a very bright light coming in the left side window, and that was very unusual too, because of course we didn't have any kind of street lights or anything like that. But being that age, I had no idea. I wasn't afraid of anything, and I had no idea what was causing it. But the voice kept telling me to come to the window, and I remember looking around for my stepdad initially, and I didn't find him. He was nowhere around. And so, just being a curious young kid, I get up and, you know, in my underwear and t-shirt, and walk across the cold hardwood floor. And I didn't go to the window where the light was coming in. There was an adjacent window for some reason I felt compelled to go to that. And we had these, we didn't have any blinds. We just had these like white, real thin, wispy curtains. And I walked to the window just out of curiosity more than anything. And I raised my right hand up and pulled the curtain back like this. And when I did, I came face to face with what we now know is a typical gray, small gray. And I just, before I could scream, react, or anything, I was taken. I was gone instantly.
You didn't know what it was. At 5 years old, you didn't know what it was, did you?
Not at all. I had nothing to compare it to. I couldn't even, there was nothing to process even what was happening or what I'd seen, what was standing in front of me, and it was literally a foot and a half in front of me. And we had like a small black and white TV, you know, and I wasn't a kid that like watched a lot of cartoons or nothing like that. I'd never even heard the word alien. I had absolutely nothing. In fact, at that point in time, I hadn't even seen other races of humans. I mean, I'd just been around Caucasian people, and that was it. I mean, that's the kind of sheltered life that I had. So I had absolutely nothing to process what this big insect-looking thing with the big black eyes was and standing in front of me. And when I opened my eyes again, I was actually laying on a table and surrounded by these things.
So you have no idea how they got you out of the house into their ship on the table?
No, not at that time. It was actually years. It was only in the last few years that I know how they did it. I went my entire life, even when I found out in my early 20s. We can get to that, but what was happening to me, I still didn't know how they were doing it.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Go ahead and continue now about waking up on the table.
Well, I was obviously going into hysterics. I was screaming. They were trying to tell me the same thing that they still to this day, you know, they're not going to hurt you, and not to be afraid and that type of thing like that. It wasn't working. I was screaming profusely for my mother. She wasn't coming to help, and then they must have pulled something from my subconscious, and they instantly turned into like doctors, and they were all wearing like these surgical masks. Didn't help. I was just as afraid of that because I couldn't understand what was happening to me. And they must have did some kind of something mind control thing to calm me down. They definitely had that kind of capabilities. And I calmed down. I don't remember what else was done as far as examination or any kind of initial procedures at that time. But the next thing I remembered from that event was being escorted to another area of what I perceived now to be a craft, but then I had no idea where I was at. And they took me to a room where there was this round shaped seating, and it was sort of leveled like stairs, and there was more of the small grays there, and they actually set me down by a tall gray, which I've since learned are the ones that's clearly in charge. That's the real aliens. And he started doing a psychological ploy on me to befriend me. And he was kind to me, you know. And as a child, I felt comfort in that, and I had nothing. You're going to go with whatever you can to grasp onto survival, you know. And so I thought to myself, you know, at least this one's speaking to me and being nice and actually trying to converse with me. And I didn't realize at the time that they were doing it telepathically. I was still speaking out loud. I had no idea, you know, what. I mean, you're talking 5 years old. You know, there's only so much you can comprehend what's going on. Right. And that was pretty much the extent of what I remembered from the very first event. And they didn't try to suppress my memories at that time. I mean, when I came back the next morning, I was like excited to tell my mom about the little men who came and got me in the night. And, you know, I was telling her all about everything that happened. And she didn't believe me, of course, you know, and she just thought it was some kind of weird dream, or it was my imaginary friends and that type of thing like that. And so I just really didn't talk about it any further. And they came one other time after that. And this time that we had a big screened-in porch, on one side of the house, and they coaxed me over there, and I remember like walking out of the it's a mudroom basically, and there was a small concrete porch off of that room, and I stood out there, and I remember like feeling very tall because they were still on the ground, and there was more of them this time. The first time there was the guy by the window, and we had a big tree in the front yard, and there was a couple of them standing back a little ways, 10, 12, 15 feet away. This time there was 4 or 5 of them that came for some reason, and they took me out across our yard, and then sort of like we sort of started kind of floating kind of across like a field there, and I don't remember anything on that one other than just being taken that time. But I told my mom about that one as well, and she still just chalked it up to the imaginary friends. And then the Wizard of Oz was coming on, and she started talking about the Wizard of Oz and hyping it up to us kids and telling us how we're going to like it and everything. So we had like a little family night, gathered around our small black and white TV to watch the Wizard of Oz, and I was having a really good time watching it. And then the scene came with the flying monkeys, and it sent me into hysterics. And I ran out of the room, and my mom couldn't understand like what was going on, and she kept trying to comfort me. And of course, it reminded me of the little guys coming to get me, the same as they did to Dorothy and Toto. And after that, I think the Grays picked up on it, and that was it. They suppressed everything from then all the way until my early 20s. I went through my childhood. I had a lot of symptoms of being regularly abducted. And I would have one being like chronic nosebleeds that the doctors couldn't get under control or had any idea as to why they were happening, which stems from early implants and up the nasal cavities. But I didn't remember anything, and I was really drawn. I started being when I got to be a little bit older, I started being really drawn to the subject. And I remember many times, like we still out in the country, and I remember many times like looking up at the sky. I would tell my cousin, there's people up there and things like that, just something that normally a child wouldn't say. And what began to happen was I started having, I became like a ghost magnet. I started having hauntings, like all kinds of stuff, and they kept coming to me, and I would hear them and see them, and other people weren't. And my family was very strict Southern Missionary Baptist, and any talk of anything like that, it was just, you just didn't talk about it. Everything was the devil, and it was something that I learned early on that I couldn't share with anybody. So I had to seek out my own answers, because I spent so many years as a child just scared to death because of all the stuff that was happening to me, not putting the two together at all, because I didn't remember anything to do with the abductions. But my initial foray into paranormal research began to want to make this stop, because I was just having, we eventually got into the oil business and moved a lot because of it. So, I was always like a new kid in school and stuff like that. So it didn't matter which town we moved to, what house we moved to, anything. 80% of the time I was having some kind of paranormal activity. And so I started researching a lot of that, trying to figure out why this was happening to me and what it was. And so I pretty much went through childhood like that, my teens. When I was between 13 and 14 years old, I got an illness, got deathly sick. They couldn't figure out what was happening to me. And it started just dropping weight, and I got so weak that I couldn't even walk up the stairs anymore. And they were about to put me in the hospital for extended amount of time, and I had a dream one night, and it was the only time I remembered anything about the Greys. And I remembered being in a craft and them telling me that they were going to heal me. remembered my early experiences, but I woke up remembering the dream and also feeling a whole lot better. And my mom, I remember telling my mom, well, can you make me breakfast? And I'd barely been eating. They'd been running all these blood tests and everything like that on me. And she made me breakfast, and I ate breakfast, and, I started gaining my strength back very rapidly. Doctors couldn't figure out why all of a sudden I started getting well. Never did figure out what was wrong with me. And soon after that, I got well enough to where I was like back on my feet, going to school and everything like that. And I was out playing basketball with my friends, and teenage boys, and we got our shirts off. It's hot out in the summertime, and I came in to get a drink of water, and I was standing at the kitchen sink, and my mom comes up and she says, "What happened to your back?" And I was like, I don't know. I never look at my back, and I had this big mark, red mark across my back. She couldn't figure out what it was. She called the doctor, and we just went to this country doctor that actually had an office in his house, and he goes, "Oh, it's probably just stretch marks. He's at that age and everything like that." And so we never even got it checked out. And years later, that's the scar that was the first initial. It turned into a scar, and I've since got two more, and they're across my spine. I've had them looked at by numerous doctors. No one has ever. Only question I've ever gotten was, "When did you have surgery?" That type of thing. No doctors ever. I even had a special blood test ran 2 years ago to a new doctor I'd been going to when I went to get a physical, and had a special blood test because she couldn't figure it out either. And she come back and said, "No, it's not that." I says, "Well, what do you think they are?" And she says, "Well, we're at the clinic trying to figure it out. Nobody here has any answers either." So I've never got an answer about it, but it did coincide with whatever they did to me that night, and so they did heal me. And oddly enough, I'm sure you've heard of Brad Steiger, and I've had some nice conversations with him, and he told me that in his research, he has come across numerous abductees that got a mysterious illness right around 13 or 14 years old, very similar to what I was describing, and then became sort of miraculously healed from it.
So they give you a disease, and then they take it away from you. They cure you.
So it seemed to be. It seemed to be something, and I don't. And to this day, he didn't know even, what the whole point of it was. But it had to be something that possibly they did to us that caused the sickness, and maybe it had to gestate for a certain amount of time. It does have to do something with the spine, and then they bring you back. That's one of the things that's been a blessing for me over the years, because some people are taken once, maybe twice. They don't have a particular DNA mix. This is as far as the grades go that they're looking for their hybrid program. And then there's other people, which unfortunately are people like me, where they'll start young. It's probably a family thing, because my mom has an unusual memory when she was 14 or 15 years old, and there was something about my great grandfather, even though nobody really speak of it, but the stuff I've been told about him kind of makes me wonder if it hasn't been going on for several generations in my family. But
the abductions.
Yeah, because once they seem to favor like certain genetic traits, and once they find that, they're gonna stay with it for as long as they can.
What is your what is your nationality?
American Indian and Celtic, English Irish, and I've since found that seems to be a pretty favored mix for them. In fact, it's their favorite mix. So
is it the American Indian especially that they would be interested in?
I think so. A lot of the Native Americans, the Cherokee, and my grandmother was Cherokee. Their legends say that they came from the Pleiades star system, that they actually came from there. So I know, but a lot of natives across North America have stories of their ancestors coming from the stars, or being visited by the star people in some regard. So
Now you said you think you're okay. You think this was, and I've heard that as well, that it's generational. Did your mother did your mother ever attempt to get hypnotized or past life regression to find out if she was actually abducted?
no, no, she's had the same type of interest as she got older, but I don't think it's something psychologically that she's prepared to deal with, and that's not a knock against her. It happens to a lot of people, because it's a once, and I tell people this, because if you start having some kind of even conscious memories, or certain things that you'll come across will trigger a memory, or you have these very vivid dreams, and there's a definite difference between like a regular dream and these flashbacks, that there's stuff that's buried in your subconscious, because your subconscious protects you from trauma. And so there's like, when you open the door, then there's no going back, and I tell people, like, look, if you think that you're functioning normally, and you may have some kind of inkling that something happened to you, I actually recommend leaving it alone, because it's there's people that it gets to the point like suicidal. In 2015, I personally know 2 abductees that killed themselves because they could not handle the anxiety associated with it. So it's very serious, and I went through, and that's how I actually found out what was happening to me, because in my early 20s, I started having these severe panic attacks. Now, in my youth, I was an athlete, and so I played a lot of sports. I was a star basketball player, and been in front of people a lot. Then I got into music, and I was doing shows, and so I was in front of people and everything. And I got agoraphobic. Agoraphobia so bad that I didn't even want to leave the house, and I couldn't figure out why. I was like really against my nature to be like that. And I mean, I've always been, sort of quiet and everything, but I'm not to the point where, I can't like even like get out of my house, or can't get in a crowd, be around a crowd, all that type of thing. And I couldn't figure out why, and it got crippling. I mean, just crippling. And it was one of the worst things to deal with. And anybody that's out there that's dealing with anxiety, I mean, I feel for you, and I will tell you that you can overcome it, because I did. It can be done. And I ended up in therapy. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. Still having no idea where it was all coming from. And the first therapist that I went to, nothing worked. Nothing worked. I went a few times, and it didn't help. And thank God I found another guy that started talking about past lives and stuff like that, which I had a keen interest in, and still do. And he really caught my attention, and so he started teaching me some meditation techniques, and I started seeing another older gentleman that was teaching meditation classes I lived in Las Vegas at the time, and so I started practicing meditation on a very regular basis. And then my therapist was teaching me a lot of mental techniques, and I actually started doing experiments with him. Stuff like learning to freeze your hand, and somebody could pinch it and you wouldn't feel it, and things like that. And between all that is when I sort of had in the book I call it the awakening. It was a breakthrough, but when it happened, and I started having these memories surface, because what happened, it's you can only hold so much in, and in my case, I'd been taken so many times and had so many things done to me that it started surfacing physically in the form of anxiety. And so when that started happening, and then I started having dreams, and that's when the nightmares started. And most of the nightmares, the main recurring nightmare was from the first incident. It left such an indelible mark on my psyche that as a child, I would replay that in my mind so many times. In my dreams, I would just relive that same thing, pulling back the curtain,
That's
seeing
interesting.
the gray, the big black eyes, which to this day is very difficult for me to look at their eyes. It's just it's unless you've experienced it, it's a horrible experience. There's nothing there. I mean, it's black upon black, and I think it's just something that gets embedded in you at an early age, because they're always leaning over you, and they get close to your face, and so even as an adult, it gets difficult to even look at it. But
Yeah, because I understand the abductees, the aliens, do something to your mind to suppress everything, so you lose memory of all of that. And the only way that I understand is that under past life regressions or being hypnotized is when the memory comes back.
No, that's not necessarily the case.
Okay.
A lot of times people will go to that because they've already had a memory come back and they want to get further into it. Because there's really no reason to have it done unless you start to have unless you're having some kind of physical symptoms, or flashback memories, or some kind of dreams, like I'm talking about. And then usually you can get further in and explore like what you've already remembered. Mm-hmm. I purposely never did that, because what happened to me is it came like a floodgate, and I really didn't have to. I was already remembering like so much stuff. And when I did initially, I not only didn't tell my therapist about it, I didn't tell anybody. I was trying to deal with this on my own, which was a mistake. But I also went through. You go through. It's same as post-traumatic stress. And you exhibit pretty much all the same symptoms as that. And the first thing that I did, which is very common, is deny. I was like, there's just no way this happened to me. I didn't want it to happen to me. I didn't want to accept what I was remembering. And so I just tried to ignore it, tried to deny it, but it just kept coming. And I realized that this really is happening, and it did happen. And then I got really angry about it. Mm-hmm. Because I felt so violated, and still do. Honestly, I mean, you never get over that part of it, because what happens on these abductions, a lot of people, it's always the same condescending jokes, anal probes and ha ha ha. It's so much more complex than that, way more complex than that. And there's a lot of mental things that are done to you. These very intrusive experiments, physically. Like I never have had a memory on what happened, how I got the scars on my back. There's 3 total, one big one and two smaller ones. I've got 2 puncture marks over here on my rib cage, scars from procedures. Once again, I don't remember, because I think it's the protection of your subconscious, because maybe we can't really handle the extent of what has been done. But there's a lot of mental things that they do as well, and it's not just physical. And because they're creating these hybrids, and the Greys themselves are pretty much void of emotions. They're very stoic, and I'll just tell your audience right now that I sincerely believe, and I think I'm very correct about it, that the small Greys that we see in the media all the time and has become, unfortunately, so commercialized. They're not the actual aliens. I think that they're workers. I think they're biological robots. They're created by the tall Greys. They're very programmed. They're very logic-based. Anything that happens that's out of the normal, they don't even know how to react to it. They have this hive mentality. And it's repeated over and over and over. And whereas it's a completely different scenario with the tall Greys, but that's something that you don't see in the media, because most of the time people are taken by the small Greys, as far as the Greys, and of course the Greys aren't the only ones that are taking people, but I think they're probably one of the most prominent species that we know about and taken. But that's true. They suppress the memories. good at it. Their mental capabilities it's pretty much incomprehensible. I can't even tell you how powerful these beings are to control you. There is nothing, there's a lot of sexual stuff that goes on. And because not only, it's not just a matter of them, taking ova, taking sperm from you, which is, even for a man, is akin to being raped. And they do it with machinery, but it's still a violation, and they force, they've got the biological part figured out, obviously, but they don't have the human emotions figured out, so they run these experiments where they'll pull stuff out of your mind. That's I go through several examples of this in the book, but briefly, one example was I had a little black poodle for years and years. He died when he was 16, and of course I really loved the dog. And I remember being taken, and sometimes they dress you, other times you'll be nude the whole entire time. It all depends on what's going on. And this time they had put me in this it's a tight-fitting material, sort of a skin-tight black outfit, and they escorted me to this room, this big room with nothing in it, and there was some observation windows on one side, and they just left me in there, and I had no idea. This was one of the first times that I remembered any kind of mental experiment that they subjected me to. And the next thing I know, I'm what to me feels like outside, summer day, birds chirping, green grass, sun's in the blue sky, and which is very confusing. One second you're on this foreign craft with these strange beings, and the next second, you seem something very familiar, and you start to sort of lose a little bit of your sense of reality, like what's happening. And I hear a dog barking, and I turn around, and it's my dog. His name was Sam. And your first reaction is it doesn't register that he's not alive. Like, I was just so happy to see him, and he was younger, and he started playing. He was just so happy to see me, like he always was in life. And I started petting him, playing with him, and just totally fell into the illusion. And after it went on for a few minutes, however long, they just instantly took it all away, and I was back in this sterile room, nothing in it. And I realized that what they had done. They will do whatever they can to elicit different emotions that they can observe and study, because what's happening is these hybrids that they're creating have enough human DNA that they're carrying over that part of it. Like they're exhibiting emotions that the creators, the tall grays, don't know how to handle. They don't know what to do with it. And so they're very, very interested in that part of our species. As a physical specimen, we make quite a physical specimen, especially compared to them. They're just as you have seen them. They're very frail, very frail. So as a physical specimen, we're really a catch to them. But intellectually, I don't think so at all. But I think that they have to continue to do these experiments with our emotions to learn what makes us tick and what triggers that particular emotion, because I think these hybrids are coming out with some of these same characteristics, and it's caused a problem for them. So they set you up with these mental experiments, which is really kind of cruel, because the stuff that they do, they draw from memories that sometimes it's hard to go through it again, and they will do that depending on what they're looking for, whether they're trying to make you happy, trying to make you angry, trying to make you sad, trying to make you horny. I mean, it's really it runs the whole gamut, you know, because they will set up experiments with other humans, sexual experiments.
So you were also on the ship with other humans that you saw.
Yes, yes. And every time that I've been in a circumstance like that, the other humans seem like that they're conscious, but sort of like in a zombie-like drug kind of state of mind. And I've always wondered, like, am I the same way? You know, am I appearing that same way to them? Because you're controlled. You can't. There's nothing you can resist. Their control over you is so strong. Whether you want to do something is irrelevant, or not want to do it is irrelevant, because you're going to do what they want. There's nothing you can do about it. And so even in those type of experiments and stuff that they do, and I think part of it is that they're trying to understand the feelings associated with the sexual act, but they don't realize, like, you know, two strangers like that, it's not going to have that kind of what they're looking for. But it doesn't stop them from trying. And so they'll do that type of thing. You know, in fact, there was in my book, I described a time when I was taken and went into a large dome-shaped room, and at the front of it there was tall grays and small grays, you know, and these built-in chairs. Observing, there was these blue cot bed type things, rows of them, and there was that many people involved, and they were guiding all these people, matching it up with different people, and then sometimes they would stop you and move you to somebody else, and everybody was in this sort of drugged out, you know, like they were, like I said, it's conscious, but you're there but not there. And I remember, like, being escorted up the side of this room, and it was ramps. Most of the craft that they have, the lighting is different, very different than ours. They can control light, keeping it from bleeding into one room from the next, and also everything is built into the craft itself. And they don't like steps. A lot of things are ramped unless they can, if they can avoid steps, they do for some reason. And I was going up escorted up the side, and, you know, and sometimes people say, well, why didn't you just try to run away, or why didn't you try to strike them and stuff like that? You can't. You just can't. You know, they have that much mind control. You're not going to do anything. So there was a room on the left side of this ramp, and as I was passing by, there was no door. It was just an entryway, and I remember, like, looking to my left, and I saw all these men. There was 12, 15. They were packed in there like sardines, and they were all nude, and they were just standing there like zombied out. You know, I mean, that's I know I don't know if zombie is the right word, but I don't know how else to try to describe it. You know, they just were completely incoherent and unaware of what was happening to them. But their eyes were open. You know, they seemed conscious, and I like actually stopped and was looking, and maybe they wanted me to see that on purpose. I don't know. And not too much further up the ramp, we passed another room, and this one was women, exactly the same way. And, you know, it's just like labs and rats in a laboratory. And that particular, I wrote about that in the book, and a lady contacted me. I won't go into too much of it because I'm actually going to go into great details in the new book about this, but I think it's important to know that, you know, it's like she had the exact same experience. And at first, I thought that maybe she was just telling me this because she'd read what I put in the book, and she was sort of just copying it and that type of thing like that. Until she says, oh, I have drawings, and my therapist, and she goes, actually, my therapist is in the Nashville area where you're at. And lo and behold, I actually know the woman. So I was able to get the drawings and get it validated that she had went to therapy for this before my book even came out. We didn't know each other, didn't know either one's story, especially something as, the taboo is about the sexual stuff. Nobody wants to talk about that, just to this day and age, it's still taboo. And that's one of the main components of what's happening with the hybrid program with the Greys. And she showed me, she talked about the people being in this same kind of drugged out type of state, how she had no control. She didn't want to do it, but she had no control to stop it. She had drawings of the blue cot-like structures that were built into the floor. So she just, and so the area and the beds, or whatever you want to call them, that they were using, she described all the same stuff before my book even came out.
Oh my goodness. So you weren't hypnotized? You just went to a therapist and all this came out?
I've never had regression. I've thought about it, but I think that once that I had the breakthrough that I did, that there was just no stopping it. And part of what deep meditation is not that far off from hypnosis. And I actually took a hypnosis class, to help deal with what was happening to me. I actually took it. A lot of stuff that I was doing in my 20s, I was foolish enough at that time to believe that I would make my mind strong enough that I would be able to resist what they wanted me to do. Like I was, it was really quite a fantasy, but I spent a lot of time trying to do that. And I came close. One time, I call it the intake room. It's like there's an area where when you're first taken, you're always given this sort of brief examination. And there was 3 Greys, and this is when I was really, really getting good at my own mental capabilities of different, like example, because being an athlete, I started suffering from heel pain, and I ended up having to get cortisone injections, and I was able to do those, without showing any pain whatsoever. And the doctor was like, "Man, this is crazy. How'd you do that?" Because most people have to have nurses come in and hold them down because it hurts. So they stick a big needle with cortisone into an inflamed tissue in your heel. It's pretty painful. And it was that's how good I had gotten at that. And so I had, one of the times I was taken, I opened my eyes and it was the same routine. And there was a couple of Greys toward the end of the bed and one come around on the right side. And he started to lean over me. And before he got, I just knew that I had broken the hold, the mental hold. I just felt it, they don't have control of me right now. And I raised up suddenly, which is something that's just not done. And it really, really freaked them out. They backed. It was one of those things that was illogical to them, and they didn't know how to react. And so they actually backed up, all 3 of them, against the wall. And it was so empowering to me. I felt just a feeling that it was of euphoric feeling that I never felt before, because it was something that I won. It was like a small victory for me after all the things that they had done to me and all the times that they controlled me. For once, I was in control, and I was screaming at them, telling them that. And it didn't last long. They got control of me again very quickly, and I've never been able to do it again. And at this point in time in my life, I don't even try. I just want to get back and hope I survive whatever's going to happen.
I was listening to one of your I was listening to you on YouTube at some of the shows and the conference that you had done, and You were talking about your girlfriend was also abducted?
Yeah, that happened in the late 80s, and it was one of the most traumatic things that I had been through. She was living with me at the time, and even though she was on birth control pills, she came up pregnant. I know it can happen, but it's pretty rare. And so, we had been talking. We decided to keep it, and she started going to the OBGYN, and everything was going along perfect. And it was 1 week shy of her first trimester. And I had, before that, started experiencing a series of nosebleeds again. And had a couple memories, but I hadn't really, I didn't tell her anything. And it's a situation like you don't want to scare other people, and you also don't want it to happen to anybody else or subject them to it. And but one night it was a loud bump, a loud thump, actually, which we later learned was an old-fashioned typewriter that she had on an end table that was it was a pretty large master bedroom, and it woke us up. And when we woke up, she remembers seeing 4. I seen 5 grays. One of them was standing back by the master bedroom, or master bath, which would have blocked her view. She couldn't have seen him. Had us surrounded, and immediately took us and put us in the same. We were in the same room, and she was on a table to my right. There was a bunch of equipment and stuff on her right, and it was mostly small grays, but the tall gray was, they had her up like in stirrups, like they do women in exams, and I was about 10 or 12 feet away on another platform type thing that they lay you on, and I'd never been taken where I saw so many grays during any kind of procedure or anything at once. And they were surrounded her, except they'd left her left side like an opening, like where I could see her. And they did the same thing to me. Like they were surrounded all around me, except they had left my right side open, so I could look over, which I was, because she was, they didn't try to suppress her vocals, which they can do that as well. And she's screaming, please don't take my baby. Why are you doing this? And she had no idea what was happening. And she's begging them, pleading them to stop. And I realized what was happening. And I was helpless. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't move. My whole body was paralyzed. I couldn't move anything but my head. And I thought, well, they obviously want me to witness this. I'm not going to give them the pleasure of that. And so I turned my head back, and I just tried to block it all out. And one of them came around and put his hand like over my head, like this. And he didn't really have to force me, but mentally he was using that. I think it was just using his hand as a guide, and I couldn't resist, and my head went back, and I wasn't able to turn it back after that. And
why do you think they wanted you to see that?
Because it goes back to the emotions, because they knew, they wanted to see what kind of attachment I think that I had to it. They don't understand like parental things and parental love and parental bonds at all. And I think they wanted to elicit, they wanted to see what emotion was going to be associated with that act from both of us. And it was an extremely cruel thing to do, not only to take it, but for me to watch it. And it was the most angry I have ever been, ever in my life. And I could still talk to, and I started just saying everything, every cuss word I knew, and telling them what I was going to do to them, and threatening to kill them, and promising that some way, somehow, I was going to come back and kill them. And if I could have got free, I would have. I would have took them all out. It was just horrific, and
what happened to her?
Well, we woke up the next morning, and the sun's bright, sunny day, Vegas, sun all the time, and coming through the window, and she gets up and she says, "Oh, there's like blood on the bed, on the sheets." And I was like, "Uh-oh." And so she goes to the bathroom, and there wasn't a lot of blood, but there was blood, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm bleeding. You better," I won't say his name, but she said her doctor's name, and we better go in, And so we told him what was happening. He says, "Come in immediately." And we didn't live very far from the office, and he examines her, and he's like, "Well, I think you've had a miscarriage." And she says, "No, that's impossible." And she goes, "There was no tissue that came out. There was just blood. That's it." So we went across the street to Women's Hospital on East Sahara, which is not there anymore, but it was then. And he was going to do what's called the D&C, where they go in and scrape the womb. And so I called her mom, and I called my mom, and they came down there. And I remember being in the waiting room, and I see him coming down the hallway, and he had this funny look on his face, and I thought something happened, because he was telling it before it was routine procedure and all this. And so I got up to meet him, and when I did, my mom followed a little bit behind, and I said, "What's wrong?" And he was sort of had this scratching his head, puzzled look on his face. And it's like the damnedest thing I've ever seen, and it's like, what? And he goes, "Oh, well, she's okay." He goes, "But when I went in there to clean the womb, it was already cleaned." And he goes, "If I hadn't just seen her a week ago, it was like I wouldn't believe this woman was ever even pregnant."
Oh my God!
So and what happened? And further at that, we ended up breaking up and everything. And a couple of years ago, we've actually both did a couple of television shows together. But the first one that I did was a Monsters and Mysteries episode on Destination. Yeah. And so they wanted me to get a hold of her, and I was like, wow, I don't know. I haven't talked to her in 15 years, or longer. And I found her on Facebook, and I was like, I didn't know how to bring it up, because we had made a vow when we left the hospital. I didn't know she remembered it, and I didn't want to say anything. But it did get brought up, and she did remember it at that time. And we just sort of made a vow, man, nobody's going to believe this. Let's just try to forget it and go on. And that's kind of what we did. Although I remember, my mom at the hospital, I remember turning around to my mom and saying they took it. But I sort of slipped, because I remembered. And I'm not sure if my mom really knew what I was even talking about at that time. But so when we went on the show, they interviewed, we flew to Vegas, and they interviewed, my mom was on there, my wife Gina was on there, several people on my side of the family. Well, they interviewed her separately, just out of respect to everybody involved. And so I had no idea. All she had told me was, "Yes, I remember it." And I didn't ask any further questions. And when the producer guy came back, because we were filming some B-roll stuff in the park, and so I asked him, I said, how did it go with the interview? And he's like, she remembered verbatim, same as you. So,
really?
And apparently, to this day, she claims that she still sleeps with a nightlight on, and always worries about him coming back. But to my knowledge, she's never had another experience. But so it's just it's a situation where two people were taken at the same time, and had a very tragic event happen that a doctor couldn't even explain. And the Greys made no effort to suppress the memory in either one of us.
Do you remember what they did with it after they took it from her?
No, I don't know what they did with it. 2 or 3 years later, it was about 2.5 years later. Around that time, I was taken again and had another experience where I was escorted again by a couple of small Greys. I was dressed this time, and they took me into this rather large room, and it was very dimly lit. And I got a little alarmed because I'm like, this is really, really unusual, because most of the time on their crafts, everything's very sterile, very, very clean, and very well lit, like very bright. And this was not the case, and so I got a little worried that this wasn't going to be pleasant. And I was trying to ask questions, but it's irrelevant to ask a question to a small Grey because they are not going to answer you. And so they instructed me, telepathically to wait. And there was just this sort of little little small lights going down the one side. So it was pretty dark in there, and I had no idea what was about to happen. My heart's beating, and there was a long ramp that was leading down to this sort of large entryway, and it was I could see a very, very bright light at the bottom of this. It was 50, 60 feet away, and maybe even a little further than that, and I was puzzled as to what was in there and why that light wasn't coming into the darkness of the room I was in. And I just stood there for a couple minutes looking down there, and then a figure broke the light and started coming up the ramp toward me. And I could see that it was a female, which is very unusual to see. And as I got closer, I could see that it was a hybrid female. And she was wearing this really loose-fitting, not really a dress, sort of a dress type thing, but it was, some kind of really sheer material. And as she got closer, I could see that she was carrying a small child. And she wasn't really big herself, but she was taller than the smaller Greys. And she got come up to me, and she set the child down, and she started telling me that it was my child, and she wanted me to interact with it. And I refused. I tried to refuse. At first, I refused, and I looked down at the child, and it didn't look. It looked unusual, but it had a certain softness to it, and it looked almost passable as a human. Like, you might see the child walking down the street or something, and you might give it a second look, because especially the eyes were a little unusual, but they were sort of a bluish gray, very odd color of blue eyes, and they were large. She had thin lips, but she had very white, stringy hair, as did the other adult hybrid. But other than that, there was just some kind. She wasn't communicating with me, but she was just looking up at me, and there was just something inside of me that kind of just fell for her, and so I knelt down and I started trying to communicate with her, and I started interacting with her. Whether or not she was my child or not, it sort of didn't matter. I liked her, and I started feeling sort of a closeness with her and sort of a bond, and it went on for several minutes, and she, like I said, she didn't communicate with. She seemed very curious about me as I was about her. She never really smiled or anything like that, but just from looking in her eyes, she seemed to enjoy the interaction. Like I felt that she that she did, but there was a certain sense of like peace, like in her eyes, and the softness that really hit home with me. And
is that where the drawing? Your brother is a artist.
He's a remarkable artist. He's an award-winning artist, and he did the depiction on the cover of the book. That's her.
Okay, let me show the viewers. Okay, so this is what you saw.
Pretty close. Pretty close.
Wow.
Really, really close. Her hair was a little bit whiter and a little bit like thinner, but for the book cover, we for the way the light was coming, the light coming from the back on the book cover is actually the light from the room that I'm talking about. And what happened is, as soon as that I sort of felt a bond with her, that the adult hybrid picked her up and without even saying anything, and just picked her up and started walking away.
So did she have those really big eyes like that?
Yeah.
She did. She's gorgeous. She really looked like that, huh?
Yeah,
wow, she's beautiful.
And I tried my best to describe, and he sent me a couple of different versions, and I'm like, that's not quite it. And, we sort of did like the police drawing type things, when they're, and then he pretty well nailed it.
Wow.
Very, very close depiction of that. And there's her image, there's been people all across the world have contacted me and said, I just can't quit staring at the little girl on your cover. She just does something to me. Or told me that they have seen similar type children with the same characteristics as her. But when they start taking her away, I was, it's like, please, wait, what's her name? I don't even know her name, that type of stuff like that. And,
but Bret, there is a alien race called the Nordics that look very human, and they're very pale, like this little girl. Could she have been a Nordic?
I've never had any kind of, it's possible. I don't know. It's possible. I do think that that there's some species that are working together, although I never personally have had any kind of experience with Nordic. There have been experiences with most of the experiences are the reptilians and the Greys working together, and I go into that further in the new book as well. But I think, judging from the other hybrids female hybrids, adults that I came into, they have a similar type look as hers. But I do believe that the Greys themselves are trying to fine tune, so to speak, their hybridization program to the extent that they could probably integrate into our society relatively undetected.
Let me ask you this. Since they are able to control your mind, do you really truly believe she looked like that when you were looking at her, and they put this in your brain that this is what she should look like, and she really didn't look like that?
There's that possibility. Because you can't really trust anything that they do. But most of the times when the stuff that they do mentally to you is in a sort of a controlled environment, where they'll pull something from your mind. And they couldn't have pulled anything like her from my mind because I've never really saw anything like her before.
Did they give you any indication that you would ever see her again?
No. And that's one of the things that bothers me the most about these experiences, is that for years, all this time, I've always wondered why they never let me see her again. Whatever happened to her? What's she doing? What she look like now? Would she remember me? Have I seen her again and I don't remember it? Because obviously you can't remember every single thing, every single time that you're taken or what's done to you. I probably, people's like, well, you've got quite a few memories. Like, yeah. But if you consider that, this has been happening for decades to me on a pretty regular basis, then I only remember a fraction of it.
Well, then that woman that had the child, she probably was the mother, don't you think?
Maybe.
Okay, so if that's the
It's,
case,
it's sperm from me before numerous times, so who knows? That's another thing that's with this, because there could be no telling how many hybrids up there that could have my DNA in them. That so whether it was that child, the fetus that was taken that night, or a completely different one. Timing wise, it would be pretty close, because she looked to be just like she does in the picture. Maybe three.
Yeah.
3 years old.
Okay, so if these,
timing wise, it would time out pretty close to that.
okay, the aliens are so different looking. Their bodies are different. She and some of them are more human-like. Well, can they coincide together? What about food? How do they? I mean, were you able to find out what they eat? What do they really look like? How do they sleep? What kind of habits they have?
No, no, no. I have been taken to by the tall gray to a room full of fetuses in these incubator type tubes, and explain, that they are for the hyper program. But you're only allowed to ask. You can ask all you want, but they're not going to reveal all that much to you. And I guess it serves. They only do what serves their purpose and not what serves yours. So that's pretty much it. So I've never. I would assume that the hybrids would have some kind of digestion system similar to humans, because they are, as us as a physical specimen. So they're going to create as close to that, because I wouldn't think that they would want to duplicate their own bodies, because just of what they are. How they eat, I have no idea, or how old they live, anything like that. I've never been in any area that I've ever been in. I've never seen anything, any kind of quarters that they would sleep in. You're just not privy to that kind of stuff.
Wow.
I remember one time taken to an area where they initially, it was a tall gray again, and I know I have a little bit of liberty when the same tall gray that's been over and over, that he will answer certain things. And one time that they had taken me to an area and they had showed me this screen with all these catastrophic events of Earth, everything you can imagine, wars and volcanoes erupting, floods, fires, tsunamis, all this disastrous stuff. And after, I didn't really fall for it, because I told him, I was like, I don't know why you're showing me this. Perhaps it's some kind of a warning, but I said, I'm not going to fall for this, because, and he wanted to know why, and I said, because I don't believe that you're going to let this happen, because it would disrupt the flow of everything in our soul, not only our solar system, but it would create some kind of ripple effect if we destroy this planet. And he didn't acknowledge whether I was right or not, per se, but we moved on to this small little ramp, and there was an elevated part of the room, and the wall itself, he wanted me to sit on there was a long bench there. It was actually, my brother drew a drawing of it in the book, and I didn't want to sit down. First of all, it was uncomfortable for me because I'm pretty tall, and it was tiny. And I said, we were standing, like I was facing him by this wall and on this little platform area, and I asked permission to ask him a question, and he agreed that I could ask the question. And I knew, like, well, it depends on what question that I'm going to ask, what he may or may not answer, because it's happened before. And the thing that has always been my main curiosity was who was their God?
I heard, yeah.
And so I asked him that. And without hesitation, he says, "We are all one with the one who is all." And I was so floored, by his reply and the simplicity of it, but also how profound that it was, that I couldn't even follow up. I was like, wow, he just said it all,
Mm-hmm.
And I just went over and sat down on the little bench, and he proceeded to tell me that there was a disease on our planet called cancer, and which of course I acknowledged that there was, and that I knew about, of course, and the wall disappeared, and in its place, this holographic image came up, because actually above, at the top part of the wall, there was these sort of I can only describe it like modern hieroglyphic type thing, these symbol things spaced out all across the top section of this wall. But underneath that, this large section just disappeared, what I had perceived to be a wall before. And it was just this sort of holographic screen, and this formula starts coming on the screen. And it was very, very complex. I had no idea what it was. And I said, "What is this?" And he says, "This is the cure." Which I was elated, and I couldn't even believe that it was happening. And I was like, wow, everything that I've given them, everything they put me through, this is my reward. They're going to help us. That was my first thought, and I was thankful at first, and it got very complex several times. It looked like something Einstein would have put on a chalkboard or something. And he says I could take it. And this may sound silly, but I said, can I write it down? Because that's the only thing I could think of. I don't know, I never had seen any kind of writing instrument, but, that was just the only thing that somebody from our planet, that's what you're going to think of. Can I write this down? And he says, "You must remember it." And I said, "There's no way I can't remember this." And I remember saying at the time, "I can't remember this. I'm not even good at math." And there wasn't, even if you were, you could be a math whiz and you wouldn't remember this formula. And so I started getting a little upset, and I was like, no, please, just let me write it on something, anything. And I can't remember this. I'm begging with him. And I started, he saw that I was getting agitated. And I don't know if he mentally sent some kind of message to the worker guys or something, but they came and got me and started escorting me out. And I was very upset. And so, that's, to me, looking back on it, I really don't think it was a cure for cancer. I think it was, once again, one of those emotional experiments, to bring out, to see what this was going to do to the human. And funny enough, I actually did a radio show with a girl, her name's Suzanne Chancellor, and a pretty prominent UFO researcher named Grant Cameron. I'd met him out in Vegas, and he knew from my book about the cancer formula story. And he said, "Do you know Suzanne Chancellor?" I was like, "No, I don't." And he says, "Well, when she was a child, she's had experiences, and she was also taken and shown and told her that it was a cure for cancer." So.
And you know what? They probably do. They probably could give us the cure for cancer.
Oh, I know they could. Yeah.
Why won't they do that? Why won't they do that?
I don't know. I wish I knew. I wish, that's one of the in the UFO community, especially in the abduction community, there's sort of two factions. There's the space brothers and, the people that's had these traumatic experiences, and these people, not in UFO field in general. And there's this faction that believes that all aliens are our space brothers and they're here to help
Yeah.
our species, and um, on and on. I won't go into
Yeah.
but you get the gist, right?
Yeah.
And they get upset with people like me who's all I have to say is, like, from my observation of our planet and our species, we're if they're here to help us and have been helping us, as some people claim, I certainly do not see any evidence of it.
Mm-hmm.
Look around. So what are they waiting for? Because we're on the brink of destruction, self-destruction right now, and on and on and on. With animals going extinct, due to mankind, destroying the earth.
Yeah, exactly.
So our space brothers, and are here to help us. I've seen no evidence of it whatsoever. The only evidence of anything beneficiary to man is the trade-off that's happened with our government and probably others for technology, and in exchange to look the other way because one thing about abductees, it happens to all people from all walks of life. And I mean, there is prominent people. There is a very famous country star right here in Nashville. I can't say because if somebody tells me they don't want to reveal it, I don't reveal it. But who's had abduction experiences? So I mean, there's doctors, lawyers, prominent people in society, to all walks of life, and most won't come out publicly because of the stigma associated with it. That's one of the things that I'm trying to change. That's one of the reasons that I kept my book. I kept my experiences for 20 some years, and only a handful of people even knew. So I mean, I've been there. I understand, the reluctance to bring forth what's happened to you. So, but one of the reasons that I came out with the book, I knew if I ever came out that I was going to have the little girl on the cover, and I was going to be called Children of the Greys. But I wanted to. I was like, well, I'm not getting any younger, and I have a lot to offer as far as the memories and what I've went through, and also went through in this plane, like here on Earth, as somebody that's had to suffer in silence, is what I call it, and deal with all this stuff. Not only the physical part of it, and I wanted to bring about more awareness. Like I was willing to put my head on the chopping block, so to speak, and it happens because a lot of times people, they try their best. It's a fear. Fear equals control in all aspects, and they feel threatened by this because they're afraid of it, and it may even threaten their belief systems. Because the bottom line is, so what if some of these species do reveal themselves someday? Full disclosure, and we're in a big press conference with all the dignitaries and the president and everything, and some reporter says, starts talking to them about religion or something, and they're like, oh, hey, you guys, they're not, Jesus wasn't, no, Muhammad, no way, all this stuff. So you all guys are all wrong. We've been around 100,000 years longer than you. Here's what the real truth is. That type of scenario. Can you imagine the kind of chaos that would take place after that? So there's a lot of factors involved in this. Like I said, it gets really, really complex. But I do think that we probably have benefited from the technology. I mean, if you look even since like Roswell in the 40s, the crash of Roswell, and the technological lead that we have had as a species for the thousands of years that we've been here, and we had just all that time on a time scale, we had just got up to slow moving airplanes and automobiles. And then all of a sudden, look at that timeline of thousands of years and compare it, with the last 70 years or so, and now we're digital technology and lasers, and now we're into nanotechnology, which is a very alarming technology. And it's like, do we as a species all of a sudden in 70 or 80 years just get that much more intelligent? as we have been, for thousands of years before that? I don't think so.
Do you think that they're hybrids, right? They're half alien and half human, and they say that they are walking among us?
No, they don't say that. I think it's just, I think that it's highly possible. And only to do so, to learn more about us, to observe us as a species, because they're not just creating a handful of hybrids. They're creating, this has been going on for a long time, and there is thousands, if not tens of thousands of people having abduction experiences of some kind. And so it's rampant across the globe, and it's happening on just a large scale. So, some people think that they're going to take us over. I don't.
That's what I heard. Yeah. Well, I heard that they are walking among us. But if that's the case, if they are living on our Earth, and they do look human, because you wouldn't be able to distinguish that they are a alien, except maybe their personality. So these people, if they're living on our Earth, and they need a place to stay, they would have to have an income. They would have to have a job. And wouldn't their personalities, they're not like us, not yet anyway.
Actually, they may not have to have a job, because if there is an agreement with certain black op factions of our government,
gotcha.
They can be financed, pretty nicely.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so, and there have been reports, people seeing unusual, either somebody trying to, wear sunglasses in a place that they probably shouldn't, or mannerisms that are a little odd. And granted, there's a ton of different people out there, odd personalities and things like that. But, there have been, I've talked to people, who told me that they swore up and down that, they talked to somebody briefly, and whatever happened in the conversation, they were like, this person had to be like a hybrid, type of thing like that. And so it does make you wonder, but I think that it's went on, the program has went on for so long now that it would not surprise me in the least bit that they're among us. And because one of the things that's alarming is they have cloaking capabilities, not only for their craft, but themselves. And so and because of their mental control, like what you kind of alluded to earlier, it's possible that they could be walking, they could look like, in the reptilian's case, they could look like a reptilian, be walking down the street, but because of the mind control, that we see them as businessman or something, so,
yeah.
I don't know how draining that is on them to do that type of thing, but I think that between everything that they can do, it sounds so sci-fi, but it is, to a certain degree, because it's stuff that we don't think is possible. Like the way that they take us is they're able to travel through wormholes, and they open up dimensional portals.
I believe that. Yes. Can I ask you something, Britt? We keep hearing a clicking sound coming from your area, from where you're sitting. Is anything clicking there?
Unless it's possibly my chair. Not that I hear anything here. It's pretty quiet.
I also understand. I used to have a paranormal team, and one of the team members, she said her daughter is a star child, and that and I saw a picture of the girl, and she was like an albino, and this lady said that she would hear communications with the aliens, and it was a clicking sound all the time. So I'm just wondering if the clicking coming from your end, the aliens could be listening.
Well, they very well could be, because you're implanted, and through the implants, they have the ability to not only control your behavior, but they can see what you see, hear what you hear. That's, to me, one of the most frightening things that that I deal with now, that I worry about. I'm not. I've got to the point where the fear factor involved has subsided quite a bit over the years, but there's certain things like worrying about the control, like what's the puppet master is going to do with the puppet now, and I do think that they can hear everything, and not that they do it 24/7, but anytime that they want to, and so I know there's certain sounds associated. I have heard that before.
The clicking.
The clicking. Usually with me.
It just did it again.
Before an event, like I said, it's possible that it's my chair. I don't know. I'm trying not to move, but usually a precursor to an event, an actual abduction event. Not that you get warned every single time, but to me, there's a pulsating, very low frequency hum that happens, and many times I'm the only one that hears it. And because I've asked my wife, I've asked other people, you hear that, and it usually is a signal that something's going to happen. And it was about a year and a half ago that it went on for a couple of days, and I ended up having a pretty profound event. Went up to a few days later. I actually remembered part of the event, and I had called a friend of mine here and just sort of did a brief inquiry, like, hey, if you had anything happen. He's an abductee, lifelong abductee like myself. And he had, and he remembered it also. And I called a second person, and everybody was hearing the same hum, because everybody, it seemed that we were all taken at the same time. And I actually went to a place called Octagon Hall up in Franklin, Kentucky. It's
I know that.
A prominent, they're friends of mine up there, the Birds. And went up there for an investigation. And one of the guys up there is a guy I know for a while, and who's also an abductee, and he has a paranormal group. And I talked. Now that was my chair. Is that what you're hearing?
Yes.
Okay, that might be it. And I just asked him the same thing. I said, hey, in the last few days, if you had any kind of memories pop up or any kind of thing. He says, I've been hearing this hum. So here was like 3 other people beside myself, all known people that I've known that's had experiences. And, we all start hearing this hum, and all of us had experiences, So that's associated. Sometimes there's also a high-pitched squeal sound, almost like feedback, that, I don't know, sometimes I wonder if it has something to do with the implants, but a lot of times I think the implants are sort of like the small grays, that they're sort of like a biological device as well that that attaches to your nerve endings and becomes like sort of part of you. And with nanotechnology that even we're developing, which I'm sure that's where we got it from, was them. There's no telling what they can do and what they can control. I think different implants are for different things. Obviously they're tracking devices, no doubt about it, because I've moved all over the place and they find me no matter where.
Did you get scanned to see if you did have a tracking device?
A scan?
Yeah. Did you get scanned? They can scan your whole body.
No, I've never had like an MRI. Because I'm not 100% sure that they're going to show up in the MRI, first of all. I've seen people claiming that they, but because I believe that they're A, nano, very, very small, and B, that they become just, like a biological machine. I'm not so sure because they are like organic material and sort of become that part of you that it's going to show up. It would be interesting. I wouldn't mind trying it, but I've seen people claiming that they can find, implants with stud finders.
Oh, with a stud? Oh my God!
Yeah, I don't really buy into that, but that's what they claim, and because I just don't think it's like that mechanical. But I know, like when I suffered nosebleeds for so much of my life, off and on, and I remember asking them, "Can you take it out? Can you? I can't take these nosebleeds anymore." And they did, and they moved, and so I don't know exactly where. I did have a bump that's behind my left ear now. But I do think there's probably more than there's. This is kind of I don't like to think about this, but sometimes I've heard that some people have memories that they actually take your eyeball out and put an implant, behind your eye. It wouldn't surprise me, but I do think that they are able to control you. Some people believe that that's the telepathic part of it, that they're actually talking through these implants, but I think that they're just advanced enough that they can do the telepathy anyway. So, there's probably more than one implant in somebody that's taken numerous times, and they possibly serve different purposes.
Now, I had heard you say that they have absolutely no emotions. No
Right.
emotions. None whatsoever.
No, not that I've ever witnessed ever, and everything that's ever happened, they're just very stoic. They don't seem to have any kind of empathy toward us in any way, shape, or form. And maybe it's just what's they've evolved or de-evolution, maybe in their case. Who knows if they've always looked like this? It's speculated that they've relied on technology to the extent that that's over the generations. That's why they've atrophied, because they've never used their muscle, and that's possible. And maybe because of that they've got eventually started losing any kind of emotion that they may have had, or maybe that's just their species. But there doesn't, even between them, there's just nothing I've ever seen. Everything is almost military-like. It's like it's the workers. They do create clones. I've seen human clones on more than one occasion. They looked exactly like each other. They did not use. They didn't speak telepathically. They actually spoke, just out loud, verbally, like audible speaking, like we do. But I was convinced that they were clones, and they were working just like the small grays do. They were working for the tall grays. So it's.
Did these clones all speak? Did these clones all speak English, or did they speak different languages?
The only ones that have spoken to me spoke English.
Now, do you think if they had at the time when they do abduct someone that speaks German, that they'll hear those clones speak their language?
I would imagine so. I don't know how they would be able to do any other kind of communication, if they didn't. And I'm sure that they would have that kind of mental capabilities, because these guys, I can't stress enough, like the level of not only mind control. Like, I don't worry, like like talk about if they invade our planet, we'll go to war with them, and you see these movies like Independence Day and everything like that. It's a joke. You could take one tall gray, and stand him up against an entire legion of forces, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least bit that he didn't have that kind of mental capabilities, that they would turn their guns on each other and kill each other, without him ever raising a weapon. I see no need for them to have a weapon, because they have the mental weapon, and that's pretty much all you really need if you think about it.
Now, I also heard you say that they, because all the images that we see on the web, they are not wearing clothes. Now, you said they do wear clothes.
They do wear clothes. I'm not really sure. I think part of that comes from because what they do wear blends in with, a lot of times, especially the small grays, it blends in with their skin color, and it's skin tight. The only loose-fitting garments that I've ever seen is the tall gray, and they wear like sort of like these robe, like these long kind of robe garments, and they're not the skin color, like the small grays. And of course, the hybrid women, they don't wear like the skin tight stuff either. So I think that's a lot of what plays into that is that, because I've never seen them where they're just have nothing on. I mean, I always remember them having some kind of a super tight. I don't know what material it is, but almost like a wetsuit type thing that blends in, with their bodies. So, but it's possible. I mean, I'm not gonna, if people see them like that, but I kind of chuckle about it. A lot of times, that here this advanced species. But if it was a small gray and they are just made as workers, it could be possible that they're sent to get somebody and they don't bother having any kind of clothing on them.
And you could tell the difference between females and males?
There is. I've never seen an actual female gray. Only the hybrids. I think there's some kind of major shortage of females, or there's some kind of hierarchy exists where they don't let the females do anything. But the only females I've ever seen are hybrids.
Wow.
And that may be the whole part of the whole hybridization program, is to save themselves, is to save their species, because there's all these theories out there as to what happened to them and why, and no one really knows. I don't care who says they're an expert. It's all theory. No one knows for sure what their true agenda is, as far as any species. But the grays seem to be the ones that's doing the most as far as creating the hybrid program, and there does seem to be a certain sense of desperation with what they're doing. I don't know. I sense like that it's just a necessity. Because at the level that they're doing it at, and the amount of hybrids that they're creating, and maybe that sense of desperation does stem back from them just saving their species.
Oh, I was going to ask you. Oh, gosh, what did I want to ask you? Oh, and they leave the ship. They come and get you, and they're able to breathe our air. And then when you go on the ship, you're able to breathe the air. So they can breathe our air.
They can.
Wow, how could that be?
Well, it would just depend on what their planet is like. And I mean, they're coming out all the time with findings of Earth-like planets. So, they could have very well came from an Earth-like planet, where the oxygen content is similar to ours. So, that could be easily explained. But they actually open up these portals, and people talk about, I was floated through the wall, I was floated through the roof, that type of thing. And to your mind, that's what's happening, because, and I talk about it in Children of the Greys, like the first time that it happened to me, I always wonder, I never had any kind of memory like that people, being floated out the window or floated through a wall or anything like that. And it bothered me. I was wondering, man, I had memories of them here, and I have memories wherever they're taking me. But I never knew how I got there. And then they sort of like answered me one day, one night, and I initially thought that it was a haunting, because that still happens to me to this day. It's actually one of the positive things that I pulled from my experiences, and it's a coping mechanism for me, is that I have pretty much a reputation of being a spirit communicator, and I'm clairaudient, and so I kind of use that to help people on both sides. The people that's passed that needs closure, and also the ones here. And part of that, I think, stems from how they're taking this, because I know so many abductees that come back with enhanced psychic awareness,
Exactly.
myself included. I kind of don't like to talk about saying being a psychic, because it has such a negative connotation to it. But of course, as you know, there is the genuine people out there, and but so many that I know are mediums, or have some advanced psychic ability in some degree. And I think it has to do with the way they're taking us through these dimensional portals, where we start our frequency changes, we start vibrating at a faster rate, I think closer to the spirit world. And because of that, we become like a beacon, and those that are on the other side that are seeking help, which many of them are, my findings, that that's some of the main reasons for hauntings. And so they know we can sense them in whatever way, that ability that we have came back with, whether it be, hear them, see them, sense them, or a combination of all that. And so they seek us out, to help them. But they opened up a portal right on my bedroom wall, and I heard a tapping on my bed, which I initially thought was a spirit coming for help and trying to get my attention, because it's happened so many times to me. And I let it happen a couple times before I opened my eyes, and I kind of half expected maybe to see part of an apparition or something, because that's happened also. I've seen full body apparitions, and then of course sometimes you don't see anything, but somebody's there. And instead I saw grays lined up down the side of my bed, but which is very unusual, because I usually don't want to wake you. But I could see my bedroom wall was I was facing the bedroom wall, and was no longer there, and instead it was this oval shape, and around the oval shape was this about 1.5 feet of this sort of white, misty looking stuff all the way around the oval shape. And through that, I could see inside a craft, and I could see another gray waiting inside the craft, facing me.
Can you give us a description of the craft?
Can I do what?
Yeah, can you give me a description of the craft?
Yeah, I kind of did earlier. Most of them, they don't have furniture per se.
No, the outside.
Outside, no, because it's never been a situation where you see the craft land in your yard or something like that, and you see what it looks like or whatever. It's always you're just inside, you're taken from wherever you're at, and it can happen in the daytime as well. But that's how I think they can, when they are in our atmosphere, that they can cloak themselves. I have witnessed that, but I only seen it briefly, not enough to describe the actual craft. And I saw the cloak disappear, and saw sort of the bottom part, and then it just.
Oh, so they're cloaking their machine, their flying saucer. So we can't see it. I wonder if the government can detect it.
I doubt it. I don't think. I think that they're able to mask the radar. I think they reveal themselves to who they want to. A lot of times, I don't pay a lot of attention at this stage in my life, that for going through this for so long, to sightings that much. Only because now there's so many things in the sky that there's just satellites, and now that we got drones everywhere, people with their own drones, and there is weather balloons. I know lots of people weather balloons, and all kinds of aircraft, and there's secret military aircraft, and it just goes on. And there's so many things out there that could be mistaken. And if it's something, there's people that seem sort of obsessed with, chasing around lights, and in fact, the whole MUFON organization is one of them. and I've spoken for MUFON, and they know, how I feel about that. But I just think it's such a waste of time. We've been chasing lights in the sky for years and years and years. It's like a dog chasing its tail. Where's it got us? Nowhere. Instead, there's so many people out there with firsthand encounters and firsthand experiences, and we sort of get like shuffled to the side by the UFO community while they're out like taking a report for somebody that's seen, like a drone or something flying through the sky. It's just ridiculous, and it's pretty frustrating, because if you want to find out about what's happening and who's doing it and what they look like and what their craft is and on and on and on, then you go talk to the people that's had firsthand interaction with them. And, and that's something that needs to change.
What about the submersible spacecrafts?
It's absolutely going on. I think for sure that there are undersea bases. Absolutely.
We have one in San Francisco. It's been seen.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I think those are actually some more legit reports, because when you see a craft like going into the ocean, I've actually had an experience that I'll be talking about in the new book. I was back in Vegas. We moved back there briefly for about a year ago. And when I got back in Vegas, all hell broke loose for me, and I had a succession of events. Just really traumatic stuff. And it was the first time that I'd had that kind of experience. And so I've actually 100% believe that the submersibles are happening, and that there is undersea bases, no doubt about it.
Oh man. What else did I want to ask you? How are you're still having abductions to this day?
Yeah, it's not going to end. It's something that you have to learn to accept. They're not as many as they go. It goes in, and it seems like you go through different stages where you'll have multiple events in a very short amount of time, and then they'll go away for a while. And so, in fact, I went for.
Oh, Bret, hold on for 1 second, honey. Hey, my mod, Royce, can you send me we have some questions. Are you still able to answer some questions?
Yeah, I can answer a few.
We got over 140 people. Hold on. Royce, can you send me their questions, please? Everybody, you might have to retype them. Royce, is Royce there? I don't see Royce. Royce, are you there? All right. Well, I'm gonna have to scroll up then. I don't know what happened to Royce. Okay, so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to know if you would take some questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did you want to finish what you were saying, Bret, before I rudely interrupted you? I'm sorry.
That's all right. Let's go ahead and get to the questions.
All right, let's go back. Somebody, Sean asked before about the Men in Black. What do you know about the Men in Black?
I don't know a whole lot. I had one experience like that when I was a child. I was in 5th grade, and so it happened to me kind of young. I was still living in Southern Illinois. It was a small town, rural town, going to really small grade school there. And we was at recess, and the kids come up, and in back there was a small little road in back of the school, and some kids come up to me and said, "Hey, there's some men in a car that are asking for you." And so I went back there, and it was a typical Men in Black descriptions, and they were, these guys were wearing black suits, and they were in a black, like old Lincoln, everything that you hear about Men in Black, and they were trying to get me to go with them. They wanted me to get in the car, and they were telling me that my grandmother was one. They wanted me, that she was the one that sent them, and But what they didn't know was that I had no relationship with my grandmother, and so she wouldn't have she wouldn't have sent two guys in a big black car to get me wearing black suits. And I told them that, I was a pretty smart little guy, and I ran off to tell the teacher that some guys were trying to take me.
Oh, wow.
So that was, I had no idea at the time anything about Men in Black, but they did pretty much match the descriptions of your typical Men in Black stories.
Since you're doing conferences and you're writing a second book now, do you think that the government is aware that you are an abductee, and have they tried to contact you in any way?
I'm positive they're aware of it. There were years ago, I don't know if you've heard of a guy named John Lear, but he's from the Learjet family, and he's one of the first, with George Knapp there in Vegas, first pretty much broke the Bob Lazar story about the back engineering up at Area 51, and that was like, I think, 89, and I was friends with him back then, and he was one of the first outsiders that I'd actually told my story to and what I remembered at that time, and he kind of took me under his wing, and he's a controversial guy, since then, but he during that time, he was doing a lot of public speaking and a lot of radio and stuff, and then the whole thing about Area 51 was breaking loose, and so he and I both found taps. Our phone was tapped even back then. But it doesn't bother me at all. I haven't been contacted. I've had a couple, like a UPS. It was supposed to be a UPS truck. Pulled in front of our house one time, and on a cul-de-sac, which is nothing but a field on the other side, and parked at a really weird angle and stayed there for a while, and then I had to go somewhere, and I was really leery, why this truck was, because those UPS guys are usually like super big hurry, they're going to deliver the package and get going, and this guy wasn't doing that, and we parked him back at the house, and so I pulled out, and I could have avoided him, but instead I kind of went around the cul-de-sac, and I noticed that there was actually no plates or markings on the truck whatsoever, and the guy knew that I was observing him, and he had like these weird goggles, like these big like ski looking goggles on, and he was just like staring out, like at the field. Like most of the time when somebody drives by you in a circumstance like that, you're gonna just turn around and look anyway. It's like a natural thing to do. And he never acknowledged that I went over there or anything. Almost like he was trying to hide his face from me. So that was sort of weird. I can't say that it was the government, but it was certainly an odd thing. But I'm not one of these people that bashes the government for hiding this stuff. I don't blame them for doing what they're doing, because I don't think they have much choice in it. There's nothing they can really do about it. They don't want us to know that, but there's nothing they can do about it. And in fact, I think I'm probably helping their cause, to acclimate people, because that's what's happening, and people's going on big disclosure movement, and they go meet with these, flunky Congress people, and I don't mean any disrespect to the guys that are doing that, because I know they put a lot of effort into it, but I just sincerely do not believe that that's ever going to happen, that our government's just going to say, yeah, we've been lying to you all this time, we're in cahoots with them, and, we're doing this, we're doing that, because obviously, we would never believe anything we were ever told again. So they're not going to do that. They're not going to do it. But I think what is happening is kind of what I posted this on my Facebook page today. There's a soft disclosure is what I call it. Like, disclosure is happening. It's happening all the time. It's like, just like NASA come out and said, there's trillions of planets that could have alien lives, that could support alien life. They keep kind of all these numbers. They started with the Goldilocks zone years ago, and it was like 1 million possible planets, and just in the Goldilocks zone in our galaxy alone, and of course there's billions of galaxies, and now the numbers keep getting up and up and up, and they keep talking about alien life, and they're slowly acclimating the public to acceptance, and you can see that in the polls, because the polls will indicate, when you do these surveys, like, well, there's a higher percentage, way higher percentage, even in the last 20 years, people said, yeah, we believe that there's life on other planets. It's still kind of in the middle whether they believe that they visited us or not, but it's this slow acclimation, and I think that if anything, that I'm doing them a favor, because I publicly reveal everything I know, and even more will come out in the second book, so they don't have to bring me in to question anything, because it's all written down, or I publicly stated it, what I'd observed, and if anything, I'm helping bring about more awareness, because that's really my main goal. I want to help other people that's out there that's had these experiences, that's been traumatic for them, to know that you're not alone in this, that you can get through it. There's support groups out there. The important thing is to tell somebody, don't keep it into yourself. But nowadays it's getting better. There's people that will believe you, and if I have to catch some flack and stuff, and most of the time people will try to attack you on Amazon or something, and it won't have nothing to do with your book. They'll just want to attack you because they fear what you're, and they'll say, I should be locked up, I should have a straitjacket, but luckily I've most people, friends of mine, I have a good reputation and good character all through my life for people that's always been friends of mine, my family, and when I came out with this, people's like, if he says it, it happened, because this guy is a straight up guy, so I don't really, other than probably, I'm sure I'm observed all the time, and that's okay.
Now, are you aware of David Pilates, who writes these books on 411 missing? And he mostly talks about those missing in national forests. And we actually did a show on that, where 1 minute they're there, and then the next minute, poof, they're gone. And it happens right in front of people. Do you believe that they're being abducted? What do you think happens to them?
I'm not sure. I've never really researched that to the extent. It's quite a mystery, and I know that he's dedicated a lot of time and effort into that. I don't even. What does he think? Oh,
I haven't read any of his books. But I think there is speculation.
Because of it goes back once again to the dimensional portals. That's how quickly it happens. Because even in my case, when I was able to witness the portal, I was trying to scream because I didn't want them taking my wife, and I was trying to scream basically to warn her, although I don't know why, because she couldn't have got away anyway. And I was trying to get out the word no, so it's a one syllable word, and I wasn't able to. They had suppressed my vocal abilities, but instantaneously, in the time that I tried to say the word no, and I was doing it in my mind, and that length of time, it was a split second. I'm in the craft, and the word comes out. The rest of the word comes out. So it was like that quick. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case, because I do believe that somebody could disappear like that quickly. But then again, it's something that's not even abduction related that I've came across, even real close to where I live here. There's a place in Gallatin, Tennessee, a famous story where a farmer was out working in the fields, and his wife and kids brought some food and water out to him, and he was walking back to pick it up and disappeared right before their eyes.
Oh, I know that story.
Couldn't see him anymore, and then he never did come back.
No, God, that story really isn't true. That actual story, yeah. When we did the show on that came up, and that story really actually isn't true, and I know that story. Now they're also talking about Bigfoot being an alien, an interdimensional.
Right, same type of thing. They follow footprints, and the footprints will just disappear, like they vanish, just like you're talking about the people do, But but I don't know, if it's that type of thing, or if people are just walking into, some kind of a portal that we don't even know about, that's because NASA has announced 2 years ago now, I think, that they've discovered all these like wormholes around the Earth's atmosphere, like opening and closing real quickly, and even they said, like, if we were able to master and figure these things out, that it's unlimited what we'd be able to do. So that stuff's it's out there, but I don't know enough about the people missing in the national parks. I know I've heard about the stories and the firsthand accounts of them stuff, but whether it's abduction related, it's an unusual way for somebody to be taken and then never returned. But that's one of the biggest fears when you are taken, is getting back. It's survival.
Do you feel that those that have been abducted, where you saw rooms of a lot of men and rooms of a lot of women, that they may not return all of them, that they keep them on the ship?
Oh yeah, craft? Yeah. I think that's one of the main concerns. That's why, in my case, for years now, you sort of just give in to it and try to cooperate for that very reason. Because once you realize that you're going through another event, and whether or not you remember it or not, but the ones you do remember, the first thing that comes in your mind is just, what you wonder what's in store for you, but you just want to get through it. You just want to survive and hope that they return you.
Okay. We have questions here, and I think a lot of them you've already talked about during the show, and they may not have been listening. They chat a lot in the chat room. But I do have one from Spooky and Raven. Have you ever had series of patterns show up on your body that look like odd puncture wounds by needles?
Well, not patterns per se. Of course, I've got the 2 puncture marks on my left side of the rib cage, and I have had mysterious rashes a couple of times. They weren't really in a pattern. It was in my groin area. Went to the dermatologist who had no idea, never seen anything like it, didn't even know what to give me for it. Took samples, analyzed it, everything, still had no idea what it was. And there is people sometimes, I think that there's bacteria, alien bacteria, some kind of bacteria that we're either picking up from them or the devices that they're using on us, that's just foreign to us. And, it went away, but it's happened to me a couple of times, and it was pretty alarming because, it looked, it almost looked like blood blisters kind of under the skin. But, like I said, even the dermatologist had no idea what it was.
Oh, wow.
Took a scalpel, took samples, everything, never did figure it out. And so, I was pretty worried at that time that I wasn't going to be able to get rid of it, because I didn't want to say nothing to them, but I had a pretty good idea, like, what it was.
Now, Sean was, John Rad wants to know, and you've already talked about this, do aliens believe in some type of God?
Yeah, I believe they do. Like I talked about earlier, I think that pretty much said it all.
But God, not like God how we think of God.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Now, to me, that answer that they gave to you sounds like it could be. Could it be a higher alien for their God?
Oh yeah, that's definitely a possibility. But if it is, then they were insinuating that higher alien also made us.
That I know, and I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Okay, and now Sean was the one that had asked the question about the men in black, but he also wanted to know, do you think they are aliens?
The Men in Black.
Yeah.
Um, I really don't know. I mean, there's no way to know. Other than, it's just complete subjective. There's people that hone their research on that specifically, and but I don't know even if they know. I mean, that's the two things that's out there, that they're actually alien in disguise, so to speak, or they're government operatives. They do seem to have sort of they act pretty stoic from most reports, and very unusual, and and sort of that same kind of look, but I don't think there's any way for anybody to really tell, because it's too layered to tell. It's one of the two.
There's a movie producer, and I'm not sure if it's Steven Spielberg or the other one that does these really fabulous scientific type movies. And from what I read, that when they do these movies and they come up with these ideas like Men in Black and some of these other topics, that they're doing it from their experiences that they had.
Yeah, I've heard that. It does make you wonder sometimes, or if it's not their own experiences, that they're have had certain stuff leaked to them. I think it goes back a lot of times to the acclimation thing. Like, okay, let's put this out there, and put this in a certain film. There's a guy named Robbie Graham, has a new book out called Silver Screen Saucers, that basically talks about all the way Hollywood has. I'm actually in the book, and he interviewed me for a section of that about how accurate a lot of the stuff was in Hollywood. But it doesn't. I think a lot of times when you can watch that stuff, and there's certain elements of the truth, and you kind of like, well, I wonder, if somebody, either, like you said, either they themselves, that they're drawing from that, or they're actually at such a level that they are privy to certain information in order to help the public, more acceptance be gained, be a little more comfortable and acclimated to the idea that aliens are among us.
Mm-hmm. Question from let's see, who's next? Annie. Do you think that the aliens have souls, and when they die, that leave their bodies?
There's a lot of controversy about that. I think that every living thing has a soul, because you're talking about energy, and energy can't be destroyed; it just changes form. So I would say yes, but I've also heard the theory that they actually try to take human souls.
How can they take a human soul?
Well, there you go. I don't know. That's not my theory, but that's, some people are, they say that, and that I kind of I don't buy into that, because I don't want to believe that somebody's taken my soul.
Yeah.
But I mean, I will say that a lot of people that's had these experiences, you can kind of look in their, when you meet them in person, look in their eyes, there is a certain deadness, myself included. But I think that's just from trauma induced, but I do, I think, to reiterate, I think that if they're a live being, that they have to have a soul. But them taking souls, I don't really buy into that.
Okay, Kathy Salento wants to know, are people picked at random to be taken, or is there a behind-the-scene plan?
I think it's a little of both. I think that I think that, like I talked about earlier, the whole family thing, like once they that they find. I mean, because it's just like the chances of them finding me in a farm in little southern Illinois out in the middle of nowhere, that's pretty slim. But if it was been in my family for a few generations, well, they've been tracking everywhere my family for went, and the people that are involved in my family, so it would make it very easy for them to find me. And I think that's what happened in my case. But I think that sometimes it is a random thing, because it's sort of like fishing for them. If they will try this person or that person, and if it has what particular genetic makeup that we're looking for, then we've just struck gold again, and we can stay in this family for however long. But so I think it's a little bit of both.
We have another question. John Johan, can you ask Bret if he has any knowledge regarding Dulce? I think that's New Mexico.
Yeah, not firsthand. I've heard a lot about the different levels and horrific things that are going on there. I think it's more reptilian based from what I heard. Usually where there's smoke, there's fire. But how extensive that stuff is going on, get Area 51. I don't think anything's going on there now. I mean, once it becomes so well known, and that might be the same with that. That maybe at one time, but it's so out there now that they risk so much from maybe somebody trying. I mean, there's people to this day still risk being shot on the spot, drive across Area 51. And it's like, really, and so.
But why do they guard it? I mean, you still can't get close to that place. To Area 51, it's still highly guarded.
Yeah, because it's military secrets. It is. At one time, I think they probably used it to back engineer. There's the story of them having the gray there, and all that is probably a lot to that. But once it goes public like that, I mean, it's to the point now where when we do get this technology from them, then they got to develop it somewhere, and that's one of those type of places, and so of course they're going to guard it.
Okay, Janice Fender, how many times did you get contacted?
I haven't really counted. That as far as the memories that I have, it's probably 20 to 25 different events. But as far as being taken, I would imagine it's probably four or five times that at a minimum. Because if just knowing for how long it's been going on and how often that they'll never usually go more than 9 to 12 months between events, and then sometimes they'll take you 3 to 4 times in a month's period. So it kind of goes like that. So it's got to be a couple hundred probably.
Wow. When was the last time you were abducted?
The last time that I have a clear, distinct memory was about a year ago in Vegas.
When they do abduct you each time, are the experiments different?
Usually. Yeah, usually. The ones that I remember, it's usually, they never, it'll be a similar type experiment, but they usually don't do the exact same thing 2 times in a row, Like even the mental things where they'll take scenes and stuff from you, they'll pick something different and try that. They won't like they wouldn't have went back and repeated me seeing my little dog again, because I guess they know that we're not going to fall for it a second time, So in that respect, they'll mix things up. Some of the procedures, extracting sperm and stuff like that, it's the same every single time.
Jeez. Debbie Gale wants to know: have you ever seen an alien in public, and have they acknowledged you?
No. I don't think that's something that they would do because their discretion is of utmost importance to them. I don't think they would risk the reaction of any human to cause any kind of a scene.
Excuse me, the unseen. She wants to know, um, what have you gained from your encounters?
That's a good question, because people that have went through a lot of this and they're traumatized by it. That's one of the things that you have to focus on is the positive things that you draw from it, and which is what I was talking about earlier. Is the enhanced psychic awareness, the ability to have the spirit communication. So I've turned that around to help people. So I draw that as a positive. And I also have had unbelievable health. I mean, like, I'm in my 50s. I have like perfect blood pressure. My cholesterol 78. I just did a physical this week. And the nurse told me that she's been a nurse for 15 years, and I had the best blood work she's ever seen.
I've heard that before. So, Bret, with this other contactee that you have spoken to, do you guys exchange? Did you ask her the same thing, how her health was as well?
It varies. I think that some people actually have bad health repercussions from it. But I think in my case, I think actually, I don't think she's had the health that I have. But to me, not to be crude, but it's in their best interest. Like if you talk about, your prized bull. I mean that's kind of the analogy that I can make. You're going to do your best to keep that healthy, and I think that's where that's what they've done. I think that it's to their I'm a specimen that they want to take care of because they obviously like what they're getting out of me because they keep coming back, and so they're gonna get everything they can until I die. Mm-hmm. So it's to their benefit to keep me around as long as they can.
I wonder if you will have an extended lifespan compared to
it's
others.
Funny. The nurse actually told me that the other day. She's like, you probably can expect. But she said it kind of in a morbid way because she says, unless you have a car accident, anything like that, you're probably going to have a very long life. And I was like, thank you, I think. I mean, I wasn't quite sure how to take that, but so yeah, I don't know. I guess as long as you got your health, then you have everything. So
also I've heard this also. Usually, those that have been abducted come back with special gifts. Why do you think that happens?
Well, it's like I said earlier. It's from going through something that happens. With that shift, that something happens, with your chi, like your body's natural energy, and we come back and we are changed. We're vibrating at a faster pace than we should, and I think that really plays into it.
We have one last question, and that is. Nancy Sepulveda wants to know, do you have pictures of any of your marks?
Oh, yeah, they're in the book.
Okay.
Yeah, all of them. Yeah. When I did Children of the Greys, I put it all out there, even the stuff that was embarrassing, humiliating. I mean, I freely admitted I've suffered from depression from this. Still do. But I've really got a lot of coping mechanisms in place now, and that's what I try to encourage other people that's going through this. It's like, look, I'm nothing special. Like, if I can overcome it and get out of this anxiety and get out and deal with the depression, you can too. And I don't know what normal is. I really don't. And so, but you can get as close to that. More close than you think you can if you've had these experiences, and so I an inspiration for those people as an example. And not that I've got it all down, but I've survived through all this stuff, and I pulled the positive from it. I've empowered myself here, and actually, I think that it's made me a better person because it actually changed my religious beliefs. I became more spiritual and less dogmatic religion, and I care deeply about the earth, and I'm a huge animal advocate.
Oh.
I mean, huge. And so, it's those type of things that you become from these changes, because I really think it all stems from going through these experiences. I don't know if I'd have been that kind of person had I not had these experiences. So, in that regard, I think it's a good thing.
When you are still being abducted, and life has changed, our world has changed, and you probably have more questions for the Greys. Do you try to still ask them questions and hopefully that they'll give you an answer?
I haven't recently, because some of my most recent experiences have been really traumatic. And when I wrote the book, it took me 2 years to write it because I kept falling back into depression. I didn't think I was having to relive some stuff I didn't want to relive again. And, I finally got through it. And once it went public, and, I pretty much had worldwide exposure, and it was like a weight off my shoulder, and the nightmares actually subsided all the way for a couple of years. And then recently, they're starting to back up again because of what happened to me last year, So it's a constant struggle, it's a constant struggle, but it's doable. You can get through it. It's just a matter of going through the stages, and it's like what they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So,
do you think they can hear you? That they're aware of what you do, they can hear you talk, your thoughts, even though they're not right there on top of you.
Anytime they choose.
Yes, they can.
Anytime they choose.
I do have one other question. I missed it. I'm sorry. This is from Mama Joe. Oh my gosh, it was typed. Okay, Mama Joe wants to know, would they take a mother and a daughter at the same time? Because both her and her daughter are both empaths and developing mediums.
Yes, they absolutely would. It's happened numerous times.
Wow.
I've seen it. I've actually come in contact with mother-daughter.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, Bret, I want to thank you. I can't tell you how awesome and honored I was to have you on the show tonight. It was such a pleasure to have you and sharing your experiences. And everybody, let me show Bret's book again. And that book can be purchased at Amazon.com, right, Bret?
Yeah, Kindle version and print version. Some of the big box stores, it's available to them too if they don't carry it, so they can get it. But I've tried to price it reasonable. I didn't put it out to try to get rich, although I put it out, to help people and bring about more awareness, and that's what's really important. And
you're writing another book. What's going to be in the second book?
It's a continuation of my story, a lot of new experiences. It's going to have more photographic evidence. It's also some people, stories that have contacted me, whose really their experiences are congruent with mine in such a way that your jaw is just going to drop, because it sort of defies the odds.
My God. Well, I want to thank you so much, Bret. Thank you so much, and best of luck to you. And I'm sorry it's still happening to you, and there's nothing we can do to help you with that. But just we have our best wishes for you.
Well, thank you very much, Noreen, and I appreciate the great questions from your listeners, and it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much, Bret. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.